So good day everyone. We are the group 4 and we will be discussing the labeling theory. This is a continuation from the last reporter. So, labeling theory. Labeling theory had its origin in Suicide, a book by French sociologist Emile Durkheim. He argued that crime is not so much a violation of a penal code as it is an act that outrages society. He was the first to suggest that deviant labelings satisfies that function and satisfies society's need to control the behavior. George Herbert Mead posited that the self is socially constructed and reconstructed through the interactions which each person has with the community. The labeling theories suggest that people are given labels based on how others view their tendencies or behaviors. Each individual is aware of how they are judged by others because he or she has adopted many different roles and functions in social interaction and has been able to gauge the reactions of those present. Labeling theory in criminology, a theory stemming out of a sociological perspective known as symbolic interactionism, a school of thought based on the ideas of George Herbert Mead, John Dewey, W. I. Thomas, Charles Horton Cooley, and Herbert Blumer, among others. The first, as well as one of the most prominent labeling theorists, was Howard Becker, who published his groundbreaking work Outsiders in 1963. A question became popular with the criminologists during the mid-1960s. What makes some acts and some people deviant or criminal? During this time, scholars tried to shift the focus of criminology towards the effect of individuals in power responding to behavior in society in a negative. According to sociologists like Emile Durkheim, George Herbert Mead, and Kai T. Erikson, they say that deviance is functional to society and keeps stability by defining boundaries. In 1966, Erikson expanded labeling theory to include the functions of deviance, illustrating how societal reactions to deviance stigmatize the offender and separate him or her from the rest of society. The result of this stigmatization are self-fulfilling prophecy, in which the offender comes to view him or she in the same ways society does. Since the advent of positive school of criminology, beginning with the work of Cesare Lombroso in the late 1800s, scholars of crime have been primarily interested in studying what factor cause individuals to commit acts of crime and deviance, whether the causal factors are biological, example, atavism, psychological, an example of this is impulsivity, or sociological, an example of this is bad peers or neighborhoods. The scientific study of crime and deviance has for the most part focused on those factors that produce it and on the essential differences between the normal and the deviant. Labeling theory brought a fresh, new perspective to this point of view. Labeling theorists are generally uninterested in the cause of crime and more interested in the reactions to crime. We have Franklin Tannenbaum. He is considered the grandfather of labeling theory. His Crime and Community in 1938, describing social interaction involved in crime, is considered a pivotal foundation of modern criminology. While the criminal differs little or not at all from others The original impulse to first commit a crime, social interaction accounts for continued acts that develop a pattern of interest to sociologists. Tannenbaum first introduced the idea of tagging while conducting his studies with delinquent youth. He found that a negative tag or label often contributed to further involvement in delinquent activities. This initial tagging may cause the individual to adopt it is a part of their identity. The crux of Tannenbaum's argument is that the greater the attention placed on his label, the more likely the person is to identify them as labeled. In 1969, Blumer emphasized the way that the meaning arises in a social interaction through communication using language and symbols. The focus of this perspective is the interaction between individuals in society, which is the basis for meanings within that society. These theorists suggested that powerful individuals and the state create crime by labeling some behaviors as inappropriate. The focus of these theorists is on the as deviant reactions of members in society to crime, and deviance a focus that separated them from other scholars of the time. In the notion of social reaction or response by others to the behavior or individuals is central to labeling theory. Critical to this theory is understanding that the negative reaction of others to a particular behavior is what causes the behavior to be labeled as criminal or deviant. Furthermore, it is negative reaction of others to an individual engaged in particular behavior that causes that individual to be labeled as criminal or deviant or not normal. According to the literature, several reactions to deviance have been identified, including collective, rule-making, organizational, processing, and interpersonal reaction. So, si Becker defined deviance as a social interaction in which social groups create deviance by making the rules whose infraction constitutes deviance, and by applying those rules to particular people and labeling them as outsiders. Becker grouped behavior into 4 categories: falsely accused, conforming, pure deviant, and secret deviant. Falsely accused, they represent those individuals who have engaged in obedient behavior but have been perceived as deviant. Therefore, they would be falsely labeled as deviant. Conforming represent those individuals who have engaged in obedient behavior that has been viewed as obedient behavior, not been perceived as deviant. Pure deviant represent those individuals who have engaged in rule-breaking or deviant behavior that has been recognized such as. Therefore, they would be labeled as deviant by society. Secret deviant represent those individuals that have engaged in rule-breaking or deviant behavior but have not been perceived by society. Therefore, they have not been labeled. Labeling theory is closely related to social construction and symbolic interaction analysis. Labeling theory was developed by sociologists during the 1960s. Howard Saul Becker's book Outsiders was extremely influential in development of this theory and its rise to popularity. Also, the teenagers who are labeled tend to behave like a gang member of the behavior changes after label. In sociology, labeling theory is the view of deviance according to which labeled as deviant leads a person to engage in deviant behavior. originating in Howard Becker's work in the 1960s. Labeling theory explains why people behavior clashes with a social norms. For example, a teenager who lives in an urban area frequented by gangs might be labeled as a gang member. Accordingly, the teenager might begin to behave like a gang member or become one. Sometimes, the person labeled incorporates the label into the person's self-concept, as when a teenager labeled as gang member begins to think of himself or herself as a gang member. Beginning in the 1950s with the work of people like Becker and Lemert, and continuing down the present day in the pages of the journal Social Problems, the symbolic integrationist approach to deviance began to focus on the way in which negative labels get applied on the consequences of the labeling process. Edwin Lemert, for example, made a distinction between primary deviance and secondary deviance. Primary deviance is rule-breaking behavior, and secondary deviance Primary deviance is rule-breaking behavior that is carried out by people who see themselves and are seen by others as basically conformist. People break rules in all kinds of circumstances for all kinds of reasons, such as the Lemert thought sociology can possibly develop any general theories about primarily deviance. But when negative labels get applied to publicly and so powerfully that it becomes part of the individual's identity, this is what Lemers calls secondary deviance. This dramatic negative labeling become turning points in that individual's identity. Henceforth, he or she is applicable to employ his or her deviant behavior or a role based upon it as a means of defense, attack, or adjustment to problem created, the subsequent social reaction. Having been processed by the juvenile justice system and labeled a delinquent or harassed by police as a gang member, the individual takes one of that labels as a key aspect of his or her identity. Labeling theory is the theory of how the self-identity and behavior of individuals may be determined or influenced by the terms used to describe or classify them. It associates with the concept of self-fulfilling prophecy and stereotyping. Labeling theory holds that deviance is not inherent to an act, but instead focuses on the tendency of majorities to negatively label minorities or those seen as deviant from standard cultural norms. The theory was prominent during the 1960s and 1970s, and some modified versions of the theory have developed and are still currently popular. A stigma is defined as a powerfully negative label that changes a person's self-concept and social identity.
Hard labeling and soft labeling. Hard labeling and soft labeling, there are two distinctions in labeling. Hard labeling and soft labeling. People who believe in hard labeling believe that mental illness does not exist. It is merely a deviance from the norms of society that people attribute to mental illness. Those mental illnesses are socially instructed illness, and psychotic disorders do not exist. People who believe in soft labeling believe that mental illness do, in fact, exist, unlike the supporters of hard labeling. Soft labeling supporters believe that mental illness are not socially constructed but are objective problems. Based on sa akong nasabtan, sir, about sa hard labeling and soft labeling. Ang hard labeling believe that mental illness does not exist. According to them, these illnesses are entirely social constructed when we attach the label mentally ill to behavior. Matud pa sa mga tao, kini nga sakit kay ganap nga hinimo sa lipunan or should we see gihimo o gidawat sa mga tao sa society sa dihang gi-attach ang label sa mentally ill or should we see sakit sa panghuna-una adto sa lihok niya. Ang self-labeling supporters believe that mental illness are not socially constructed, while ang supporters sa self-labeling kay nito nga ang mental illness kay dili socially construct. Mao ra to kung sa substance sir.
So the next topic we have here is the chapter 5, sociological theories. So what is sociological theories? The word sociological and society are linked, so you can remember that sociological theories look at crime as a social problem, not an individual one. One key idea that sociological theories have in common thought is the idea that criminal behavior is not innate to humans and circumstances affect how people act. That is, the people aren't born criminals. It is the environment in which they live that influence how they will turn out. So it says that sociological theories or ang tao kuno dili kung gianak siya dili dayon siya mahimo nga kriminal. Ang tao mahimo nga kriminal depende sa environment, sa society nga iyang gipuy-an kung kinsa ang nag-influence ana nga tao maunang mahimo siya nga kriminal. Social disorganization theory. Social disorganization is defined as an inability of community members to achieve shared values or to solve jointly experienced problems, according to Borsig, 1988. In sociology, the social disorganization theory is one of the most important theories developed by the Chicago School related to ecological theories. In other words, a person's residential location is a substantial factors that shaping the likelihood that the person will become involved in illegal activities. So, ang social disorganization theory kuno kay ang pinaka-importante nga nahimo sa Chicago School kay it says that as I said lately na ang usa kuno ka tawo mahimo or his or her likelihood will be developed depending on the location he lived, kung kinsa ang nag-influensya sa iya, kung unsa ang society nga nakapalibot sa iyaha, maunang mahimo or maka-involve siya into illegal activities. So niingon si Larry Gaines and Roger Miller sa ilang libro nga Criminal Justice in Action that crime is largely a product of unfavorable conditions in certain communities. According to the social disorganization theory, there are ecological factors that lead to high rates of crime in these communities, and these factors link to constantly elevated levels of high school dropouts, unemployments, deteriorating infrastructures, and single-parent homes. Gaines and Miller. The theory is not intended to apply to all types of crime, just street crime at the neighborhood level. The theory has not been used to explain organized crime, corporate crime, and deviant behavior that takes place outside neighborhood settings. Edwin Sutherland adopted the concept of social disorganization to explain the increase in crime that accompanied the transformation of pre-literate and peasant societies in which influences surrounding a person were steady, uniform, harmonious, and consistent, to modern Western civilization which he believed was characterized by inconsistency, conflict, and unorganized. Edwin Sutherland also believed that the mobility, economic competition, and individualistic ideology that accompanied capitalist and was characterized by inconsistency, conflict, and organization industrial development had been responsible for the disintegration as agents of the large family and homogeneous neighborhoods of social control. And Sutherland also believed that such disorganization causes and reinforces the cultural traditions and cultural conflicts that support antisocial activity. The systematic quality of the behavior was a preference to repetitive pattern or organized offending as opposed to random events. He depicted the law-abiding culture as dominant, as a more extensive and alternative criminogenic cultural views, and as a capable of overcoming systematic crime if organized for that purpose. But because society is organized and around individual and small group interests, social permits crime to persist. Sutherland concluded that if the society is organized with preference to the values expressed in the law, the crime is eliminated. If it is not organized, crime persists and develops. In later works, Sutherland switched from the concept of social disorganization to differential social organization to convey the complexity of overlapping and conflicting levels of organization in a society. Next is strain theory. It is in the realm of culture that our values, beliefs, goals, and identities are developed. These are developed in response to the existing social structure of society, which is supposed to provide the means for us to achieve our goals and realize positive identities. However, often our culture goals are not in balance, which means made available by the social structure, and this is when structural strain occurs. And according to Merton, deviant behavior is likely to occur. Most people have similar aspirations, but they don't all have the same opportunities or abilities. When people fail to achieve society's expectations through approved means such as hard work and delayed gratification, they may attempt to achieve success through crime. In sociology and criminology, strain theory states that social structures within society may pressure citizens to commit crime. The strain may be either structural. This refers to the processes at the societal level which filter down and affect how the individual perceives his or her needs. Example, if particular social structure are inherently inadequate or there is inadequate regulation, this may change the individual's perception as to means and opportunities, or individual. This also refers to the friction and pain experienced by an individual as he or she looks for ways to satisfy his to an individual. Actually, achieving them may become more or her needs. An example of this, if the goals of a society become significant, important than the means adopted.
Merton's theory. Robert King Merton was an American sociologist who argued the society can encourage deviance to a large degree. Merton believed that socially accepted goals put pressure on a people to conform. Furthermore, Merton continued on to say when individuals are faced with a gap between their goals, usually finances, money related, and their current status occurs. Conformity. Pursuing cultural goals through socially approved means. Conformity is a tendency to align your attitude, beliefs, and behaviors with those around you. It's a powerful force that can take the form of over social pressure or subtler unconscious influence. Conformity is the act of matching attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors to group norms. And norms are implicit if specific rules shared by a group of individuals that guide individuals what guide their interaction with others. Innovation, using socially unapproved or unconventional means to obtain culturally approved goals. Example, dealing drugs or stealing to achieve financial security. Innovation can be defined simply as a new idea, device, or method. Ritualism, using the same socially approved means to achieve less elusive goals. Ritualism is when someone rejects traditional cultural goals but still adheres to the usual steps of obtaining those goals, reject goal and accept or adheres to institutionalized means of obtaining them. Retreatism, to reject both cultural goals and means to obtain it, then find a way to escape it. The rejection of culturally prescribed goals and the conventional means for attaining them. The rejection of culturally prescribed goals and the conventional means for attaining them. It could lead to socialization, depersonalization, social alienation, physical dysfunction, which could on the other hand result in criminal intention and deeds or rebellious attitude. Lastly, rebellion, to reject the cultural goals and means, then work to replace them. Open arm and usually unsuccessful defiance or resistance to an established government. Rebellion, uprising, or insurrection is a refusal of obedience or order. It refers to the open resistance against the orders of the established authority. Then there is a conformity. Diri ipakita na it is the act of matching attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors to groups or norms. Diri ang conformity usa ka aksyon nga magbase sa imong attitude, sa imong pagtuo, sa imong batasan og unsa ang imong panlihok. There is innovation, kaniya socially unapproved and conventional means to obtain culturally approved goals. O innovation kay gidefine niya in simply ang bag-o nga idea or mga butang or mga methods. And there is a ritualism. Diri magkuan siya sa traditional cultural goals sa ato ang mga traditional nga like sa mga nauso na to nga mga pagsamba, like yung from the word ritual, like pagtuo, yung og gisamba, ritualism. Retreatism mao ni bale rejection of culturally prescribed goals and conventional means for attaining them. Rejection kay culturally prescribe ang goal o mag-lead kini sa socialization, depersonalization, social alienation, physical dysfunctions, and etc. And lastly, there is a rebellion. It says that gi-reject ang usa ka cultural goals and then work to replace them. Rebellion like mga pagsuway sa, like for example, like gisuway nimo usa ka balaod from the word rebellion, like for example naay usa ka group diha, then naay usa ka tawo na mo di ganahan sa iyang, like sa iyang mga rules, mga goals sa ilang kultura, then mo na rebellion bali to reject the cultural goals and means, then work to replace.
General Strain Theory, or GST, is a sociology and criminology theory developed in the 1992 by Robert Agnew. The core idea of general strain theory is that people who experience strain or stress become distressed or upset. So mao na rason nga no makakommit og crime ang tao kay silang stress or ilang experience nila nga na sila na stress, so makakommit na possible nga makakommit sila og crime. Ang usa ka key principle ani nga theory walay lain kundi ang ato ang emotions para mo motivate ang tao nga makakommit og crime. So mao jud ang ato jud emotions. The theory was developed to conceptualize the full range of sources in society where strain possibly comes from, which Merton Strain's theory does not. Kani nga theory is nag-focus on perspective goals for status, expectations, and class rather than focusing on money as Merton's theory does. Example aning GST or general strain theory is kani mga tawo nga mo gamit og illegal drugs to make them better, and or kani mga estudyante nga naka-experience og harassment niya na may possible nga ang ilang isig ka estudyante or ilang classmate nga ila sad maharas, so murag revenge sila sa ilang experience. And diate gitawag nga three main source of strain. The first one is loss of positive stimuli. So kaning the loss of positive stimuli is nadiri ang death of family or friends. Second one is presentations of negative stimuli. So nadiri ang physical and verbal assaults. And the third one is the inability to reach a desired goal. So kaning strain mao ni ang mag-lead to negative emotions such as frustrations and anger. Kana nga emotions makahimo og pressures for corrective actions and crime. Usad sad nga possible nga result, crime is gamiton para ma-reduce or maka-escape from strain, seeks revenge against the source of strains of related target or alleviate negative emotions. For example, individual maka-experience of chronic unemployment, so possible engage siya in theft or drug selling to obtain money. So mo lagi ni ang kanidi ato ang frustration ta tapos or may stress or daghang ta problema na di possible nga makahimo tag crime ana nga ato ang mga atong experience nga di maayong experience or mga negative experience. So na jud ay nga ma-stress ka, na jud possible nga makakommit ka og crime. So strain theory, kaning strain theory is Robert Mertons is in 1910 and 2003 argued that society may be set up in a way that encourage too much deviance. Robert Mertons developed the structural strains theory as an extensional of functional perspective of deviance. So in 1940s, to explain the rising crime rates experienced in the USA at that time, strain theory has become popular with contemporary sociologist Merton argued that the cultural system of the USA was built on the American dreams, a set of meritocratic principles which assured the American public that equality of opportunity was available to all regardless of class class, gender, or ethnicity. And the American dream encouraged individuals to pursue a goal of success which was largely measured in terms of the acquisition of wealth and material possessions. And people were expected to pursue this goal through legitimate means such as educational and work. The dominant culture message was, if you are ambitious, talented, and work hard, then income and wealth should be your reward. So muna ang kuan sa ato ang string theory, and naigi develop si Merton muning gitawag natog anomy. So unsa din ang anomy? To describe the imbalance between cultural goals and institutionalized means. Si Merton kay he argued that such an imbalanced society produces anomy. There is a strain or tension between the goals and means which produce unsatisfied aspiration. He argued that when individuals are faced with a gap between their goals, usually finance, money-related, and their current status, strain occurs. Strain theories daw kay nag-state that certain strain or stress increase the likelihood of crime. And natay kuan strain involves the inability to achieve one goals o muna nga to ang monetary or status goals, the loss of positive stimuli muna lagi ang kuan, the death of friend and loss value of possession, and the last is or the presentation of negative stimuli. So mo to ang kuan parehara sa kuan sa usa nga tong verbal and physical abuse or assault. And so ang individual who experience these strains is become upset. So and they may turn to crime in a effort to cope. Crime may be a way to reduce or escape from strain. So wala lain sila mabuhat kay ang krimen daw kay maka-kuan naman sila maka-reduce naman or maka-escape para silang sa strain. For example, individual may steal the money they want or run away from the parents who abuse them. Crime may be used to seek revenge against the source of strain or related targets. For example, individual may assault the peers who harass them. Crime also may be used to alleviate negative emotions. Another example, individual may engage in illicit drugs used in an effort to make themselves feel better. So, strain theories are among the dominant explanation of crime, and as discussed in this research paper, certain strain theories have had a major impact on effort to control crime. This research paper described a types of strain most conducive to crime, why strain increase the likelihood of crime, the factor that increase the likelihood that individuals will cope with strain through a crime. So, ang kuan nasa ginaingon nga all strain theories acknowledge that most individual cope with strain is a legal manner. For example, most individual cope with monetary problem by doing such thing as cutting back on expenses, borrowing money, or working extra hours. So, dili ra day kanang crime ang magkuan aning strain theories. Nasa day mga maayo nga mabuhat aning kuan sa aning kuan, nasa mga maayo mabuhat aning strain theory. Tapos it is therefore critical to explain why some individual engage in criminal coping. So after presenting a basic overview of strain theories, it has been used to explain group differences such as gender differences in crime. So diri na sad ta sa crime causation sociological theories, strain theories gabon. Why do people engage in crime according to strain theory? They experience strain of stress, they become upset, and they something engage in crime. As a result, they may engage in crime to reduce or escape from strain. they are experiencing. For example, they may engage in violence to end harassment from others. They may steal to reduce financial problems, or they may run away from home to escape abuse parents. They may also engage in crime too.
The major type of strain. So, first, other prevent you from the achieving goal, and others take things you value or present you with negative or malicious stimuli. So, money is perhaps the central goals in the United States. All people, poor as well as rich, are encouraged to work hard that they might make a lot of money. Further, money is necessary to buy many of things we want, including the necessities of life and luxury. So, perhaps United States, so ako pagsabutan ni, so madato man ka o mapobre, so encourage yun sila to work hard, kay naa sila tagsa-tagsa nga kinahanglanon. Madato ka man o mapobre dito, kinahanglan gud mo trabaho ka. So, nakadepende ni sa imo state sa kinabuhi. So, kasagaran gyud mga pobre gyud mo commit kina sila og crime, pero dili tanan, as well sa rich nga damoy mga business sa kinabuhi. So many people, however, are prevented from getting the money they need through a legal channel such as work. This is especially true for poor people, but it is true for many middle class people with softly goals as well. So matawag yung ganina nga kasagaran gyud kuno mo kumita ng mga illegal nga pamaagi, mga poor people gyud. Then criminals and delinquents often report that they engage in incoming generation crime because they want money but cannot easily get it any other way. So apilya gihapon aning mga millennials karon, mga kabatan-unan. So mo mangita gid gihapon sila paagi para lang mga kwarta, kay lisod kuno makuha ang kwarta og dali. So naiba mo gamit na lang illegal. So ang pagsabot na ko aning perhaps goals in the United States kay money gid ang ila gid target. Madato man o pobre, hardworking kay sila, mo gamit lang gud sila og mga klaseng pamaagi. Usually gamit sila sa illegal, di na sa iba nga maayo nga pamaagi. Then next topic is social control theory. Most people will commit crime. It's not for the controls that society places on individual through institutions such as school, workplace, church, and families. Theories believe it is society responsible to maintain a certain degree of stability and certain in individual life to make roles and responsibilities clear and to create other activities of criminal activity. So social control theory, most people would commit crime. So kani siya nga theory specialize ani ang mga kabatan-unan karon nga. So for example, na kay mga friends nga na dito yung mga illegal drugs. So murag ila kadapiton sad nga mo baligyan ng butanga kay tungod kay makagain mong kwarta. So mo na siya matawag niyo na reward. So ikaw nga sa isip nga amigo mainganyo ka gyud nga mosud kay kanila ging nga ay kwarta. So mo na siyang sa social control theory. So uncertainty in individual life to make the roles and responsibility clear and to create other activity to art criminal activity. Factors influencing the effect of strain on delinquency. So sinful events and conditions make people feel bad. This is bad feelings in turn create pressure for corrective action. This is especially true of anger and frustration, which energize the individual for action. So create a desire of revenge and lower inhibition. There are several possible ways to cope with strain and the negative emotions, only some of which involve delinquency. Strain theories attempt at describe those factors that increase the likelihood of a criminal response. Then, so what are the effects of strain? So due to the effect of strain on the degree of attaching resistively of a composite with the filler volume fraction around of percolation threshold of particular sensitive to the strain of stress causing the gauge factor to relativity highly.